Welcome to another edition of This Week in Disc Golf. It is Tuesday, December 6th. I'm Charlie Eisenhood. Let's talk about what happened this week. Well, we're starting to finally get some real hot stove news. Player sponsorship moves starting to percolate a little bit over the last week. And let's begin here with 2018 World Champion Paige Shue. She's been sponsored by Dynamic Discs for a long time, hasn't really been on tour since the pandemic, but she had a post on Instagram. Take a look.
I've been playing disc golf for about 16 years now. Disc golf has been and it continues to be a central part of my life and my family's life. I'm so grateful that Jeremy Rusko took a chance on a 13-year-old girl from Colorado many years ago. And now for the first time in 13 years, I'm making a big change. I will no longer be sponsored by Dynamic Discs. I want to make it known that there's no big drama or animosity behind the scenes. I have nothing but respect for the company that has given me and my family so much, but it's time to make a change and start the next chapter of my disc golf story. I'm ready to get back out there and compete. I know I've still got some good golf left in me, and I'm so excited to see what the future holds.
So Paige Shue leaving Dynamic Discs, where her father, Doug Bjerkes, works, TD of the World Championships this year, DDO every year, Glass Blown Open. And so similar kind of situation to what we saw with Innova when Kona Panis left Innova for Dynamic Discs. And of course, Kona's father, Jeff Panis, marketing director over at Innova. So we'll see what happens with Paige. Sounds like we're going to see more of her on tour this year, which is pretty exciting if you're a fan of the FPO division. And she's got a young child at home. We'll see how much she ends up touring as we get into 2023. Elsewhere on the hot stove, Alden Harris signs a one-year extension with Prodigy, so he'll be back with the Georgia-based manufacturer again in 2023. He's been with them since 2018. He had a great year. He raised his rating from 1021 to 1030. He won a Silver Series and has been in contention in a lot of Elite Series events. He's also got an increasingly popular YouTube channel, which I recommend that you take a look at, and should be exciting to watch him, Gannon Burr, Isaac Robinson, that young core at Prodigy continue to develop as players. Stacey Haas gets a 2-year extension with MVP. She won a silver event this year as well, the Open at Tallahassee, and she is back with the Michigan-based manufacturer for another 2 years. Lots of upside for Stacey Haas. And finally, for this week, Matt Bell gets a 2-year extension with ThoughtSpace Athletics. He signed with ThoughtSpace at the beginning of last year, and so he will be back for at least 2 more years with ThoughtSpace and gets to throw maybe the coolest stamps in the game. Don't forget, Matt Bell won $25,000 this year in a DDO practice round ace pot. That's right. Eric, early recognition is critical, hooking him up with a $25,000 prize for cashing the ace. The PDGA announced some rule changes for 2023. All things considered, they are quite minor relative to what we saw of the changes in 2022. There are some notable things to keep in mind. A tiers are now going to be required to have a warm-up area, special throwing space, and if they don't have a throwing area, they need to have practice nets. Of course, you have to have practice baskets as well if you want to warm up your putting. That's already something we see at the highest levels of the Disc Golf Pro Tour, but now that will be a requirement for all A tiers, so that lots of strong local competitors will have that opportunity as well. There are also some rule changes around scorecards and being able to examine them after a round, tee time posting and rules around changing tee times, some refund changes, not a lot of other changes that make a big difference to your actual round. Notably, though, they did change the Mando rule, which has been a subject of controversy. They changed the nomenclature from restricted space to restricted plane. So trying to shore up some of the confusion around crossing through that restricted plane, whether you go through it forwards or backwards or however, if you go through it, that is a Miss Mando. So that was a big change last year. They're calling it a plane now instead of space. You also cannot, quote, intentionally deform a disc such that it is not in a circular saucer-like configuration. So those of you who like to roll up your putter into a ball and throw it into the basket, you can't do that anymore. The biggest rules update that is still not announced, but that everybody is waiting on from the PDGA are any changes to the rules around transgender participation in the FPO division. This was a major topic of conversation at the Fall Summit for the PDGA, and the board has had some sort of discussion and a vote around the issue. There have been no indications yet about what the PDGA is going to do on this rule, whether they're going to continue to allow transgender male to female participants in the FPO division, or if there are going to be changes to the requirements around that following updated rules from the International Olympic Committee. So we will await to hear from the PDGA on that, and we're expecting to hear news sometime before the end of the year on what it's going to mean going forward for FPO. So that brings us to our StatMando stat of the week. StatMando's been releasing some information about how players played particular holes during the year, whether they were open holes, wooded holes, or a mixed layout. And take a look at this. Kristen Tatar, number 1 in her score to field average. So that means that in every single hole type, she was the best player on tour this year, whether it was a wooded course, a big open shot, mixed type of hole. She shot nearly 7 strokes under par relative to the field average per 18 holes in each of those categories. On the MPO side, Paul Macbeth was the only player to be inside the top 5 in all 3 categories. He was number 1 in mixed holes, number 2 in open, and number 4 in wooded. So great to see some of these advanced analytics coming to disc golf. Go give StatMando a follow over on Instagram for their Statmas countdown, 1 stat every day through Christmas. And finally, on this week, Kristen Tatar is on the cover of the latest movement and sports science magazine in Estonia. I mean, she's really become a iconic sports star in Estonia. She's got sponsorships from Nike, from big sporting goods manufacturing retail stores, and now she's on the cover of an important and only Estonian language sports science magazine, and pretty impressive stuff from the number 1 player in 2022. That's going to do it for this edition of This Week. We'll talk to you next Tuesday right here on the Disc Golf Pro Tour YouTube channel.